Like I said, I've been here, this is at least 5, 6 times, and my contact person is Fang Waita, and right there. And every time he asks me to talk about something different, and by now I know I can do that. I've talked about wetlands education, I've talked about all kinds of things. This time he said, we would like to have you over and talk about restoration of wetlands. I said, but I've only been really working on restoration of wetlands for the past 2 years out of my 25, 30 years. He said, but I'm sure you can say something about it. And so I guess I'm at the point in my career where I can just step back and look at what other people do and try and synthesize that. And hopefully say something that benefits some, if not all of you. Some may say, oh, I already do all that. Well, that's great. But I think maybe, I hope I can make you think a bit about how the holistic approach that's already being used here in Taiwan can be taken to benefit wetlands around the island. So, that's why I call it restoration of wetlands in light of Taiwan's Wetlands Conservation Act of 2013. I have Donna Jacob there as a co-author. She is my partner in life and science. She's my husband. My husband, my wife. We have, well, you never know. And we've been working, well, we've been together for a long time, but we've been actually working together for more than 10 years now. And she gives me great ideas. So that's why she's a co-author. Before that, of course, I have to thank all the sponsors. There is, of course, the organizers of the SWS Asia chapter and the sponsors, particularly the CPA that has supported my travel on several occasions. At the top there, I also mentioned the Chinese Academy of Sciences and Professor Zhang Ming, for the reason that I was awarded a visiting scholar award to work with them in Changchun, and part of my travels here is also supported by them. And then, of course, the organizers of the Integral Wetlands meeting and people that I've worked with over the years are all part of this. And I've listed it that way because I'm giving 4 presentations, actually 5, in these 2 weeks, and so instead of copying and pasting and making mistakes, I used one template for that. Okay, introduction. I've been working on it. Jim didn't talk so long, so I can talk a little bit longer. I talk about degradation and loss of wetlands a little bit. Wetlands restoration, that's what I'm talking about. Then I want to say something about novel ecosystems. That term is being used, and I can tell you already, I don't like it. But I'm going to mention it anyway. Restored wetlands functions, structure and functions and services. Jim already showed us how to measure things. It ties in with that a little bit. Then I want to talk a little bit about shifting baselines, which is a concept that is very important as well, particularly in a society like Taiwan. I grew up in the Netherlands. It has similar problems with shifting baselines. And then I want to talk about all this in terms of implications for the Taiwan's Wetlands Conservation Act, and then some conclusions. All right. The Wetland Conservation Act was mentioned, very important. I am very fortunate that I came here when this was being put in place. Because the spin-off from that, the mindset, the development that's happening in terms of protection of wetlands and understanding of wetlands is growing and has an energy that we don't have anymore, for instance, in the United States or Europe. It is comparable to the energy that was present in the United States in the 70s, 80s, and 90s as a consequence of the Clean Water Act in the United States. So, It says there, this is the important part, and I'm quoting, by the way, I don't read Chinese, and I have this from a paper that translated it, but I have to assume that this is correct. And it says, in coordination with wetland restoration, flood prevention, flood retention, water quality purification, water resource conservation and utilization, landscape and recreation, an overall planning shall be promoted for the wetland system. If necessary, constructed wetlands may be created in proper areas of suitable means. I hope I'm quoting that correctly. There are people here who probably have written that. The important part is that restoration is in there, creation of new wetlands is in there. Let's first talk a little bit about degradation and losses of wetlands. This is possibly the most quoted image. Oh, too quick here. The most quoted image from. Oh, what did happen there? Don't go there yet. Different screens. Anyway, this is from actually the second edition of Leaching Castle, which will call Wetlands, but it's quoted again from other papers. The point is that it shows for different states in the United States how much wetlands were lost since the 1780s, between the 1780s and the 1980s. It's quoted over and over again. They get these numbers. That is actually, oh, I have to do that with my right hand, otherwise my left hand is getting tired from this is North Dakota. This is where I live roughly. I can't quite hold that still. But this is Minnesota, that's North Dakota. I work in North Dakota, that's where I make my money, and then I pay my tax in Minnesota. That's but it's quoted as saying, you know, North Dakota lost since the 1780s almost 50% of its wetlands. That is Minnesota, and then there are places like well, California, 91%. Or you go to New Jersey here somewhere, nobody can find it typically. It's a bit like Massachusetts and those states. And Virginia, West Virginia, yeah. Anyway, they all have lost a lot of wetlands. But is this actually an accurate measure of what has been happening? Well, there are other recent quotes that put it much higher. That say we are actually not measuring how much. Nick Davidson, in a talk in Corpus Christi for the SWS meeting, quoted 90% wetland loss in most places. In the Netherlands, although it's wet, almost, well, no, not almost, every, I can honestly say every wetland that is there has been impacted, changed, or is artificial. There are no natural wetlands left in the Netherlands, even if we think they are. I know my mother grew up in an area where they cut peat from wetlands in an area called Drenthe. And there's a little museum you can go to, and there's a bit of peat on the left that's from here to that wall, and that's left with what is natural. Taiwan is slightly different. In the areas that you are here, I'm guessing more than 90% of the wetlands are lost or have been altered. Taipei is built on wetlands. But if you go high up in the mountains, it's a different story there, because people couldn't get there so easy. But wetland loss is a huge issue, and why does that happen? Here's a picture that I took on the plane to Changchun. This is actually near Dalian. I flew from Shanghai to Changchun in May, and I took this picture. And what you see there is the original coastline, which is there. And then you see all this out there. This is for fish ponds, aquaculture, stuff like that. So here we have coastal wetlands in as far as they existed, being destroyed at a very high rate. And what do we get back? We get back basically crop fields, is what we get back, or aquariums, or whatever you want to call it. Yes, that's coastal development. Of course, there are other things for coastal development. Good example has been here along the coast of Taiwan, and the case, of course, of the I think it was the pharmaceutical or maybe petrochemical industry that actually started the protests that led to the Wetlands Protection Act here in Taiwan, near Taiwan. So here is another wetlands being destroyed for development. It's not a very good picture, but it's in Belize in 2012, and there's a sign in the middle of the wetlands saying for sale. Wouldn't you love to buy that and put a house in it? Particularly when the typhoon is coming. So it's like right on the coast. This is on my own property. That is my son there. He's a bit smaller than he is now because he was only 3 or 4. But what happened there is that in that part of the world, in America, should happen other places as well, we get cold weather. And I'm not talking about 15 degrees Celsius or something that we might see in the coming days with a typhoon bringing in cooler air. No, no, no. I'm talking minus 30, minus 40, really cold. So in the winter, people drive cars on the ice. It's actually easier to go from one place to another because you can just drive on the ice and come on the other way. You can drill holes in it and sit there ice fishing. You need a big drill because the ice is 2 meters thick. But you can do other things with it as well. I bought this property. It was an original homestead site, and people tried to farm it. It was not very good land. So now I have a bit of nature. We have 16 hectares, also 40 acres. And this is part of a lake that we own. What did people do in the not so long past? Because look at what it is. Refrigerators and microwaves. If you want to get rid of your old stuff, for instance, when you sell it to a Dutchman like me, what do you do in the winter? You park your dead refrigerator or microwave on the ice, and then you just wait till the ice melts. And then you get rid of it. This is 3 years ago, the water levels dropped, we had a drought of sorts, and all this stuff came up. I pulled out a total of 3 tons, 3,000 kilos of metal. I actually got $300 for it. But that shows you something about an attitude towards wetlands. I remember my dad 2 years ago say, you know, we're a developing country. Well, if Taiwan is a developing country, then so is the United States. And you have free healthcare, shall I say more? Other problems, of course, and this is worldwide, this is agriculture. Here is a paper by Carol Johnston from a few years ago about what's happening still to this day. So despite the Clean Water Act and all its ramifications, we are losing wetlands still at a high rate. Where I live now, we didn't used to have this, which is referred to as tile drains. A farmer crops the land and there's a little bit of a low spot. We would like to think of that low spot as a wetland, it's a prairie pothole. But a farmer does not like that. So what do? You put pipes on the ground that have little holes in them, and then when it rains, the water comes through, goes into the pipe, and then you pump it out quickly. And of course, and then it goes really quickly to the nearest river, which in our case is the Red River of the North, and then everybody complains when it starts flowing. So this is a serious problem. And in the particular case of the United States, with corporate and private ownership, it is really hard to get people not to do that, because you can make a little bit more money off the land. Here's another example. Somebody from Taiwan, and this ties into the shifting baseline issue, might say, oh, that looks really nice. You have cattle grazing in those, it's natural, it's nice, right? Yes, but no. Because what used to graze there is bison, not cattle. And they graze in a very different manner. They change the environment, and therefore that is not, it's maybe more desirable in some way than this. But it's not what was there originally, and it's not natural. But it looks prettier, it's nicer, and we don't have bison anymore because humans and also Native Americans, by the way, happily killed them by the thousands. Here, this is one example of a pothole, a prairie pothole that we actually study, and it is surrounded by wheat. And if it is a drier year, they go straight through it. If it is a bit wetter like this year, then they go around it. There are thousands and thousands of these in North Dakota. So, wetland restoration, is that a solution? Well, you know, sometimes you don't have a choice, but is it good? According to a colleague of mine, Dr. Mark Hansen, who works with the Minnesota Department of Natural Resources, there are some 10,000 wetland restoration projects in Minnesota alone. So I said, okay, where are they? I know a few, I'll show you a few pictures. I said, but where are those tens of thousands? He said, we don't know exactly. This is the problem. They're restored by private consultants and contractors. They might work with state or federal government. You get a contractor who has a bulldozer who digs a hole, and then there's water in it, and then things start growing, and then we restore the wetland. There is no central database where these are reported. And so to go see if somebody did a decent job at the restoration, we don't know. Most, therefore, go unreported. And if you look for scientific papers on restored wetlands, you will not even find 40 for Minnesota. You might find 30, but certainly not the 10,000 that are there. Many of them are just built, it looks good, restoration. And they're all different, of course. All locations are different. So let's look at a few pictures. This is actually from a place called Can-Do. Americans, when they settled, well, Europeans, when they settled in America, they came up with wonderful names. And one of those places is in North Dakota called Can-Do. And it really is what we can do this. Yeah, nobody would want to live there, by the way, but that's why they do it, I guess. The restoration, what they do there, is impressive. So you see pictures here, that this is what it looks like, it's full of grass. What happens a lot in that part of the United States is that land was put into something called CRP, conservation, restoration, something like that. Anyway, it is a program where farmers get money not to work the lands. But then they were told to put grasses on that were not native, that produce a lot of biomass, that really don't support much wildlife. And so that's what that is. And there was material that had eroded into the deeper places of where the wetland was, and so you start digging it out to a certain depth. And then you keep digging, different pictures, different times of year. This is what it looks like, looked like when they were just done. And this is what it looks like kind of now. I don't have the exact dates on there, but I got these from a friend. This is what it looks like now. And if you go up, you say, yeah, it looks pretty good. There's water, ducks are back, that's great. Here's another one. This is actually close by my home. This is an aerial photograph here. So there, from 1939. And what you see is that you see the outline of what were wetlands, but you see that this is plowed through. There are fields full of crops. This is 1939. In 1995, they decided it should be restored, and so they started that work. Why? Because there were stories, kind of anecdotal, where people said, on a foggy day in the fall, there were so many birds that if it was a foggy night or foggy day, and you would take a rock and throw it up, 10 birds would fall down. There are places like that across the United States on migratory routes. There's a beautiful one in New Mexico that is entirely constructed called Bosque del Apache on the Rio Grande. It's a beautiful place, but it's another example of restoration. And that's what we're trying to do here too, is to bring back birds. Excuse me. So here are images from 1991, what it looked like there, 1991, and you see the crop fields and all that. And this is a more recent image, 2015. This is actually taken from Google Earth. And so now you see that the sloughs, as they were called, Hampton Slough is the name of the place, are back. And yes, the birds are back too. Good. Here's another one. That is an impressive project. This is mainland China, a place called Xichang in Sichuan. I visited there 2 years ago. It's a pretty picture. What it was a lake that was over-eutrophicated, highly eutrophicated. There were, I don't know, thousands of little boats on it. The government decided to restore it, all the boats off, except for the native minority there called the Yi people. They can use it, nobody else. They told fishermen they can sell water chestnuts and lotus to tourists, but they spent, numbers I've heard is like 3 billion yuan, and they did this in 2-3 years. Yuan is 6 yuan to the dollar. It's just amazing. This, look familiar? In there, Taipei. This is on the river. Very impressive project, really beautiful. And of course there are issues with non-native things which then have to be fished out. But it looks really nice. This one, I have restored their inverted commas. It's more like a constructed wetland. These are the fish farms near Shanshua, I think. By time you can correct me if that is. Yeah. Well, anyway, and there's the bird you couldn't pronounce, Jim. The black-winged stilt. That's what it was done for, and they came back. All wetland restoration. This one is quite appropriate in light of what's coming at us. This one is accidentally restored because this one is in a subsidence area closer to Tainan, and it actually was formed by a typhoon. There were people there farming, fish farm and rice, and after the typhoon there was a lot of destruction. Of course, the human pain and suffering, you can't make jokes about that. But the wetlands that is there now is a protected wetlands, and we owe it to a typhoon. I don't want to predict what this one is going to be. And then there is the Taijiang National Park, where they have tried to plant mangrove as a restoration project. I've seen this several times. The last time I was there was last year, I think, and it didn't look very successful in my mind. But it's okay. I've shown you destruction of wetlands, I've shown you restoration. Now let's talk a little bit about this idea of novel ecosystems. There's a definition of several human-built, modified, or engineered niches of the Anthropocene. That's according to Wikipedia. There are several other ones. Planted forests are there. Agricultural fields are part of that. Railroads, urban landscapes. I don't like that term at all, because there's nothing novel about it. Nature has invented everything we do there. Insects have been creating novel ecosystems much longer than we have, and all kinds of other organisms. It's a good make-up term for landscape architects and engineers to, we were talking about terms yesterday also in another meeting. It's a good term to give something a name, and the problem is that then people say, oh, we have these novel ecosystems. And you know what? We can actually build something that is as good as a natural ecosystem. And that's where it goes wrong. You can call them what you want, but it's basically farming, and it's industry and urbanization. That's what it is. It is us humans doing a good job of changing the world around us. And when we are extinct, and I'm not saying if, because we will go extinct, then nature will go back to its original. There will not be a trace left of these novel ecosystems. So other examples. There's my son again. I love him to death. He traveled with me the first 2 weeks when I went to Chongqing this time around. So that's about 2 weeks ago. He's 9 now, but there he's sitting at the pond in the garden, and we enjoy it. It's beautiful. This is by the Milkfish Museum in Tainan. Pretty little pond there. Wonderful. Here is something. Baihu. It's in Chongqing, Baihu Wetland Park. And now there will be a slide that the translators don't have, but it shows you a before and after, and I just added that a few days ago. This is in Chongqing. Here we have Baihu on the Google Earth, the most recent image. So you don't have that in this slide, but for everybody, look there. It's otherwise the text is the same. This is Google Earth now, 2016, and if you click there, that is what it was like in 2011. Look at that. It is amazing what they did there. It has a cross-section here of about 1.5 kilometers, 1 mile for the Americans here, I need to translate. And they move people, you see their whole villages here, there's a whole village gone. This here, gone. And they dug out, this is along a river that comes in from the west, and they basically reconstructed floodplains. But now the problem is, if I go back for a second to this image, when you walk around, the edges are mowed, it has to be pretty. They plant in things that would never grow there, because it has to be pretty. Where there is too much movement of water, you put in barriers to prevent erosion. And so my colleagues at the Academy of Sciences there agree that these are not really wetlands, but there's water. This they also call a wetland. This is in downtown Chongqing. This is Nanhu. Nan South Bay North for you who don't speak so much. I don't speak a lot of Chinese, but I learned that. Nanhu. It's a park. And so, now this is the problem. These novel ecosystems. Is that, you know, when you experience a wetland in this way, it's valuable. Spend time with your son, look at the fish. But is that really the same as this one, which is a real wetland? That's, you see, this is in January. His coat is open, so it must be about -20. It's not, you know, he's warm there. Or catching, this is his first fish. Experiencing a wetland that way is very different from this. Here, somebody who wants to see that wetland down there cannot go sit there and start fishing, because then somebody will complain about the koi disappearing into a frying pan or something. And this wetland in a park, a wetland surrounded by trees, is that the same as this one? This is in northern Minnesota, close to where I live. Is that the same? No, it's not. So, I think we agreed it's not. So do restored wetlands have the same structure and function, and do they provide the same ecosystems as restored wetlands? That should say as natural wetlands. If my translators would also translate that. Natural, not restored. There's a seminal paper, in my view. Actually, I have to thank Nick Davidson, because he used this in his presentation, and then that helps with the idea for this. This is an amazing paper, in a sense. Marinus Matthews and co-workers, structural and functional loss in restored wetlands. It's in +1, so it's online. They studied 621 wetlands. So they actually studied studies. They did a meta-analysis. 621 studies, 401 restored to 20 newly constructed, and they analyzed basically biological structure, driven mostly by plant communities, and biogeochemical functioning, mostly storage of carbon in wetland soils. And this is something that they found. What you see here is a line of what they call reference wetlands. The ones they compare with, the ones that are supposed to be natural, least impacted. That is that line. And here are measures of different things. And it doesn't matter so much what those measures are. They're to do with ecosystem surfaces and functioning. How much mineralization is happening, how much water is being cleaned, stuff like that. And they basically say this here. Our results from the meta-analysis, and I'm quoting straight from the paper here, of 621 wetland sites from throughout the world, show that even a century after restoration efforts, biological structure driven mostly by plant assemblages and biogeochemical functioning driven primarily by the storage of carbon in wetland soils remained on average 26 to 23% lower, respectively, than in reference sites. Some of these studies were 100 years old. Now, they're maybe not quite comparing like with like. The 100-year-old ones are on the east coast of England. They're different from other sites maybe. But the point is that very few, if any of these, came to the 100%. If you ask yourself, what do we restore to? You know, if you want to restore to what was natural, then you won't get there. You cannot build a wetland and expect it to even come close to natural based on these measurements. That is why this paper is seminal. It's astounding what they found. So, we have a saying in England, in English I should say, if it looks like a duck, if it quacks like a duck, it probably is a duck, right? I underline the probably because there is a chance that it's not a duck. It could be just me, you know, with the cap on going quack, 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 it could be that. So if it looks like a wetland, smells like a wetland, is it a wetland? Is this garden ponds more like a wetland or an aquarium? It's beautiful. It's a beautiful aquarium, you know. So here's the other problem. Well, first of all, this before I go to another problem. Here's a paper, and you can look this up on the internet, where people talk more about these novel ecosystems. And the warning, and you can tell from where I'm going with this, is that you know, you can call them novel ecosystems. And people who don't know much about it, they say, oh, we can actually create something, and it's as valuable as our natural world. And that is very dangerous. It is very dangerous also for my other tenets in this story. The shifting baselines. That is a huge problem. There's a really, really good book, and I read it. Oh, go back. I read it with great pleasure, that book, The Unnatural History of the Sea. That book is about, it starts about early history of fishing, particularly examples from the United States, Delaware Bay, Chesapeake Bay. It talks about how things changed and what we think is normal. If you go back to the early 1800s in the United States, nobody would eat lobster or crab. That was like eating insects. You wouldn't eat that. You would eat small fish. And there are particular fish that were very common there that people would fish, but you would not touch a lobster. I've eaten insects, by the way, in China, also in Chile, people eat insects. I don't like it so much. But he is talking about that. So my attitude towards insects, in America at least at the time, was the same towards eating lobster and crab. And now what do? We pay $100 for a big lobster. And this is the other part of this story. We pay $100 for a big lobster. Why a big lobster? Because there's a lot of meat. So if you go fishing, what do you take? You take the big lobster. If you go hunting in Minnesota, I have lots of deer on my lands. And there's lots of deer because we killed all the predators first. But so now we have lots of deer. And which is the best deer? It's the one with the really big horns. If it's more than a 10-pointer, oh boy, that's good. That is really what this is about. Because we keep taking the big ones. And then you have smaller ones. And the big ones, the biggest ones are all gone. Now you don't know that these exist. So it's a story of this. This is actually a picture from another publication. This is one of the last National Geographics. And it's a bit about that story. That's the reverse story. That is really good. It's about how they're protecting parts of the oceans, and there is now a coming back of these big fish. But so what happens, and this is also true of anything around us, we take something away, and now we think that something that is inferior, that is not as good as that, but that we don't know about, we think that that inferior is the best we have and we get used to it. And when I grew up in the Netherlands, I recognize now what happened there. I would go for a walk in nature. I called it nature. It was actually a construction site next door by the park. I learned about real nature when I walked on my own property and ran into a bear. Now you talk about nature. But in the Netherlands where I grew up, there's, we go for a walk in nature. There's very little left of that. The same here in Taiwan. Here, yeah, you can get there if you go to the mountains. But somebody in Taipei, when they go to Da'an Park, they're not in nature. They're in a garden surrounded by big buildings. But if that is what you have, that is okay. But the problem is then, how do you explain to somebody who has always been in that situation, where the world has changed so much that it's not even close to nature anymore? How do you explain what that is, and how do we decide that? The shifting baselines problem means that if you go talk to somebody about, for instance, what to restore to, we as scientists don't even know what to restore to. So what is then good enough? And the other problem, and this is more of a problem in China, mainland China, I'm going to talk about that as well there. The current policy of urbanization is going to make this problem much worse, because people will no longer know what wetlands look like if you're in concrete wetlands. Okay, so this is what it is. Each generation gets used to smaller and smaller fish. Wetlands are like fish. There is 1967 a situation. This is a field. There's an outline there. That outline has a wetland in it. Here, this is a wetland. Here is 2010. The outline is there for you to refer to that, but it's entirely gone because of agriculture. You walk around in that crop landscape. I talk to my students. And you know, first of all, you ask them what is the most important crop in the world, and they say corn. No, it's not. Rice is the most important crop in the world. And after that, wheat, and then corn. And we grow it not for food, we grow it for ethanol, which, by the way, in People's Republic is not allowed. China, you cannot make fuel from corn, which is a good thing. But explain these things. How do you explain that to a kid that grew up in North Dakota and is used to having corn as far as the eye can see? How do you go to a kid in Jilin and as far as the eye can see is rice fields, and you want to explain what was there before and what we have lost? It is a real big problem. Here's another picture I just took from Google Earth. The thing is that the signs of what was there are still in the landscape. You can see that here, flow of water going through, but on the ground you would never know. So, implications in relation to Taiwan's Wetland Conservation Act. What do we do with that? This. The fact that restored and constructed wetlands are never the same as undisturbed wetlands, and the effects of shifting baselines must be recognized in the implementation of that law. The shifting baselines issue particularly is a problem for government. Anybody here from government? If you think about how to explain to people And if also people like us scientists try to explain to governments what is normal and what is not. Living in a concrete world like this is not normal. But it is normal for it's reality, but it's not natural to prove that. And restoration, this is the thing. To say we have a natural wetland here, but you know it's okay if we destroy it. We can rebuild it somewhere else. No, you cannot. And that is important. Maybe many of you already know this, but I want to make that point. Prioritize wetlands according to their potential to provide ecosystem services. This is not new thinking, but it needs to be done more, I think. And here is where I have an idea, and I don't know if it's already being implemented or not. You might say, well, we're already doing that, but maybe not. Here, I would first of all rank, do a ranking like this, and this is just an idea, just an example. First of all, number one category wetlands are natural undisturbed wetlands. You will not find any of those in Taiwan in the coastal area. They're all gone. But up in the mountains. Yesterday, talking with Taipei City Council people, I mentioned that we should particularly think about the mountain, alpine, inland wetlands, because for many reasons, but they are relatively unimpacted is one reason. They need to have priority in terms of protection. Then there are naturally maybe partly restored wetlands, then entirely restored wetlands as a category, new constructed wetlands. Not that some of these are not important. I was just talking with a colleague from Kaohsiung Birds Society, sorry if I mistranslate, but I think it's by Kunting, there's in the south of China, south of Kaohsiung, there's a wetland that happens to have the highest congregation of black-billed spoonbills on the island. It's also not a natural wetland. It's basically a sludge depot from dredge sludge. But as a function for the black-billed spoonbill, it still has value. And then below that, in my view, are the rice paddies. And then the traditional ones are actually better than the modern rice paddies. There will be talks here about the value of rice paddies as wetlands. They do have value, but they are below even restored wetlands in terms of their functions, in my view. I've seen them in Jilin, particularly, where rice is so expensive, because apparently Jilin makes the best rice in the world. The emperors were fed rice from Jilin, and they still... People there, American friends, they make much more money, the farmers in Jilin, than any American large-scale farmer does. The land there costs more than the most expensive farmlands in the United States. I've heard prices of $6,000 to $10,000 per acre or something like that, just to grow rice. So that then funds the machines to go in, because rice is no longer planted by hand, particularly not there. It's done by mechanical means. So this is, again, off the top of my head, wild idea proposal. But I would like to see a rating where, for instance, we say, well, natural wetlands get a value of 100, and this is how they compare. And the modern paddy is down there as a number one. From an ecological perspective. Somebody who's a farmer will rate that much higher, but that is what we need to get over if we want to restore wetlands. And then you can do something like this. Surface area needed to replace a natural undisturbed wetlands. We should never replace, or you cannot replace a natural wetland with a natural wetland. That doesn't work. So, but they're there. Maybe, natural partly, maybe 1.25. And I just made up these numbers. You can give them other numbers. Entirely restored, maybe 2. Newly constructed, maybe 5. So meaning, for 1 hectare, you need to replace it with 5 hectares to get something back. Traditional rice paddy, not applicable because no new paddies are traditional. You cannot replace. There are, unless you do it for a museum, but otherwise. And then this here, modern rice paddy. How much wetland do you need to replace? Or how much of that can you use to replace that? Not applicable, because there should be no reason ever to replace a natural undisturbed wetland with modern rice paddies, particularly in Taiwan. Why I say particularly in Taiwan is because you don't have enough space. There are too many people. You're better off importing rice from Chile, perhaps. But there's just not enough space. And also, in particular, not in Taiwan, because of the urbanization and population pressure on wetlands. So, conclusions. Restored and constructed wetlands do not provide the same ecosystem services as undisturbed wetlands. People may tell you they do not. Shifting baselines make the public less and less aware of their changing environment. That's a real problem. Proper management of wetlands should take that into account. Taiwan should adopt, and again, I don't know how far you are already, but it should adopt a system of ratings depending on the status of wetlands. Not within wetlands, that's not what I'm talking about. So the kind of thing that Jim was talking about is how do you compare one with another or different stages. But natural wetlands should have the highest priority. And then below that you can come up with a system. Taiwan has the potential, and I mean this seriously, to become a world leader in protection of wetlands. It's ironic that the political situation in Taiwan in relation to mainland China has led to where Taiwan is now in terms of protection of wetlands. It is because Taiwan could not be part of Ramsar. It's because Taiwan is not represented in the United Nations. Taiwan had to come up with its own legislation, and it did it better. Well, I don't know about the Korean example, but it did it better than almost every country in the world, including the United States. The United States has lots of problems. We still have a lot of destruction of wetlands. Taiwan looked at other places and did it better. Some will say Taiwan is already a world leader. Well, okay, I'm a scientist, so I do it carefully. I say there's a potential, right? But that is what I wanted to tell you about. Now, there are two more slides that are not there, but they are here. Because first of all, I want to acknowledge my first visit to Taiwan, 2012. And there was a guy there, Ben. Ben, show everybody where you are. Here, that's Ben. Rob McGuinness is the other one. He's unfortunately not here. But we were leaving Taiwan with our hats on, being very happy. But if you think that is funny, how about this one? You gave me a hat today, but White Tom, man, you look really interesting there. Can you see it? I can't see it. Okay. And this was a few years ago, and there's the hat again, another version of the hat. And that is by a temple somewhere. I don't know what he's doing. But White Tom, I really seriously want to thank you for being my friend.